Today we're going to talk about solving quadratics by factoring. Before we do that, let's just review factoring. Okay, so my objective is to factor each one of these quadratics. So let's take a look at the first one. Remember, I take a look at these two values and I plug them in. Then I'm going to multiply these two. That gives me -10. And then from that, I break down and list down all the combinations, 1 and 10, 2 and 5, and then figure out which one of those will give me that 9 in the middle. So these two will somehow produce a 9. More specifically, if I want a -9, it has to be a -10 with a +1. From that, I can fill out the rest of my table. Once I have my table, all I have to do is GCF each row and each column. So biggest thing that goes into 2x squared and 1x is x. Biggest thing that goes into -10x and -5 is -5. Then do the same thing for these columns, GCF 2x squared and -10x, and that gives me 2x. GCF 1x and -5, and it's going to be +1 because the closest box is 1. So again, this is all review of factoring. So I have 2x plus 1 times x minus 5. Okay, again, let's take a look at the next one. I start with my first term and then my last term. Multiply those and I get 18. Break down 18, 118, 2, 9, 3, 6, and that's it. So of these three combinations, which one could hit that 11 in the middle? It's got to be 2 and 9, and both of them need to be positive, which means I have a +2x and a +9x. Once I have my table filled out, GCF every row and column, GCF these two. Biggest thing that goes into these two would be +3. GCF these two, that would be 3x. And greatest common factor for 2x and 6 is +2. So factoring is 3x plus 2, parentheses, x plus 3. Okay. Let's repeat that one more time. Start off with 6x squared, +5 here. Multiply those, that gives me 30. All the combinations of 30, 1 and 30, 2, 15, 3, 10, 5, 6. Which one of these could hit 13 in the middle? This one you got to be careful of because this could actually hit 13, right? And so could this one. Now, how could I produce a -13 from the 2, 15 combination? It has to be a +2 and a -15. Okay, those combine, those add to create a -13. What about the 3, 10 combo? Well, in order to hit a -13, both of these have to be a negative. Okay, so -3 plus a -10 will give me a -13. So which of these two is the actual combination? Well, the problem is when I multiply 6 and 5, I get a +30. When I multiply these two guys, I get a -30. When I multiply these two guys, I get a +30. So this is my true combination here, okay? So doing all that SIGN sign check, this is a +30, so I'm going to go with the -3, -10 combination. Once I have these two filled out, then it's the same thing I've been doing in the last sections. Okay, GCF these two, GCF these two, GCF, GCF, and then I have my binomial factors. Make sure you write it as parentheses. All right, this one you got to be careful of because remember, we always got to check for standard form, and we also have to check for greatest common factor. In this situation, I can make these numbers a little bit smaller if I factor out a 2. That breaks it down to 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. Now remember, you gotta be able to factor out this GCF first for 2 reasons. Number 1, it'll make the numbers smaller and easier to work with. And number 2, if you don't do it, your answer is incorrect. Okay, so now I'm gonna break this down. I start off with my 2x squared and I end up with my -12. Multiply those, that gives me a -24. Then just repeat the same process, 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Which of these combinations could hit this 5 in the middle? This is the only one. How do I get a +5? Well, I need a +8 and a -3. So once I have that -3, +8 combination, I'm pretty much done. GCF every row and column. That is a +4. GCF these two and GCF these two. And here's my answer, 2x minus 3, x plus 4. Don't forget this original 2. So here is my final answer, okay? At this point, why don't you guys take a look at these problems from your notes, pause this video, do those, and then unpause it, and then we'll check our answers. Okay. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at this first problem here. Hopefully you guys were able to put your 2x squared here, minus 6 here. Multiply those, that's negative 12, so that's 112, 2, 6, 3, negative 3 and 4. Okay, and which one of those could hit my 1 in the middle? This one here, and it has to be a negative 4 and a positive 3 to produce that negative 1. Okay, so once I have that, I know my 3 and my negative 4 combination, then I'm pretty much done. GCF each one of these. Hopefully you got this and this. So your final answers are 2x plus 3 in parentheses and x minus 2. Make sure you write your answers as parentheses. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Hopefully for this one, you guys kind of repeated the same process, okay? All right, so I start off with my 8x squared, positive 3, okay? That gives me a 24, all the combinations of 24, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, and that's it. The next one would have been 6, so again, it's like that horseshoe repetition. We want to list as few combinations as possible. Which one of those can give me a 10 in the middle? Actually, 2 of these could, okay? So in order to get a positive 10, this could either be a negative 2 and a positive 12, or these could both be positive. Which one is the correct combination? Well, if I multiply these two, it's a positive 24. If I multiply these two, that's a negative 24. This would, if I multiply these two, would have been my positive 24. So it's the 4, 6 combination. Once I have the correct combination, then it's just a matter of GCFing every row and column. So that's going to be 4x. That's going to be positive 3. That's going to be 2x. And that's going to be a positive 1. So my answers are 2x plus 1 times 4x plus 3 in parentheses. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at 1G. Let's take a look at how you did this one. So again, we always have to check for 2 things. Number 1, it's got to be in standard form, and also GCF. So this one, hopefully you recognize we have to do a GCF. If you didn't, 2 things. Number 1, it's going to take you longer because the numbers are bigger. And number 2, it didn't work. So make sure you factor out the GCF, which is 2 in this case. That breaks this down to 3x squared minus 13x plus 4. This is the one that we're going to box up, that we're going to table up. So it's going to be 3x squared, positive 4. We start and we end there. Now we got to hit this 13 in the middle. So I multiply that, it's going to be 12. All the combinations of 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And the only one that could hit that 13 is this, if they were both negative. Okay? So I have negative 1x, negative 12x. And then GCF, just like I always would. So x, biggest thing that goes into negative 12 and 4 is negative 4 because the closest box is negative. 3x. So again, this is all the factoring skills that we already have. Okay, we're just reviewing. And then of course, don't forget this original 2 here. So your final answer should look like this. Okay. Take a look at one more. Take a look at this. So again, it is in standard form, that's great, but they forgot to do the GCF. So I should pull out, factor out a 2, shrink this down to 4x squared plus 8x minus 5. This is the one I'm going to box up and break apart, okay? So that's going to give me negative 20, so that's 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Which one of those combinations could give me that 8 in the middle? Again, we're breaking apart this part, okay? So I'm aiming for this middle, not the original, okay? So this is the only one. And in order to get a positive 8, it has to be a negative 2 and a positive 10. That's it. I found my magic combination. Then the rest of it is just simple greatest common factor, 2 things at a time. It's going to be a positive 5, closest box is positive. That's going to give me 2x, and that's going to give me negative 1. So 2x minus 1 parentheses, 2x plus 5 parentheses. Don't forget the original GCF.